When you purchase a tree, typically it's packaged in one of three ways. It may come balled and burlapped, which means that it has been grown out in a field, dug up out of that field, and the root ball has been wrapped in burlap, and then usually it's contained inside of a wire basket, or it might just be wrapped in twine. This is often referred to as B&B also. You might buy a containerized tree, which means the tree has been grown in a container and upsized as it needed to be. Now these containers can be either fabric or plastic, but they contain a whole root system of that tree. You may also buy a bare root tree, and these don't come with any packaging other than some material to keep the moisture around those roots, but it doesn't come with any soil. A lot of times when we buy trees online, especially in late winter, we might get a bare root tree. Today we have a bare root tree, and this is what we're going to look at planting. A lot of times when we talk about bare root trees, we tend to think about fruit trees. Now you can buy fruit trees at most nurseries, and those will probably likely be containerized trees. If you're not finding the correct selection that you're looking for, then you might turn to the internet, and again, it will likely come as a bare root tree. Now there's pros and cons to all of these. Obviously, if you're buying online, you don't want the weight of the soil, so that's one of the nice benefits of bare root trees. We've bought some for our new orchard that we're establishing outside our vegetable garden here. And when you get this package in the mail, you want to make sure you open it right away. You know how you feel after you've been traveling, and that's not in the cargo hold. So we want to inspect these and make sure that they don't have any damage to them. If they do, you obviously want to contact your supplier right away. Now this looks good and everything, and so because they've been out of water for quite a while, we want to make sure to rehydrate them before we plant them. So you'll want to soak those roots for about an hour or two prior to planting. You never want to soak them for more than 24 hours because that can cause some damage to them. Now when we plant, we're simply going to start digging our hole. Like I said, it's a smaller tree, so we don't have to dig quite such a big hole though. Now that we have our tree hole ready for planting, you can see that this is deep enough and it's just as wide. We want to make sure that we try to plant it at the same level that you can see the color change. Now obviously the roots have been wet, but you can see the root flare here and where the stems start right there. So we're going to make sure to get it at that same level. One area that you want to make sure never to bury is this graft union right here. Fruit trees are a lot of times grafted trees, and this particular one that we've purchased here is a Bradley nectarine tree. Bradley is actually a selection that's a cross between an Arkansas peach and an Arkansas nectarine selection. The Bradley nectarine is known for having attractive, firm fruit, and so that's why we like this cultivar. However, a lot of times fruit trees, the rootstock might not be as desirable. In this instance, it is on Lovell rootstock, which is a little bit more cold hardy and also is more tolerant of wet soils, which is ideal for our Oklahoma clay soils. So again, this is where the graft is, and this is the Lovell rootstock, and then above this is the Bradley cultivar, which will give us that nice produce. So we want to make sure not to cover that up ever, and so we will then just backfill this with our native soil that we've already excavated from this hole, and that way the tree goes ahead and gets adjusted to the soil that it will be growing in. If you put good soil in here, then it might be that that root system stays in that good soil and doesn't branch out, whereas we want those roots to really grow out. So as I said, we want to backfill with native soil, and sometimes that can be a little chunky or make blocks basically, and so you want to break those up with your hands so that it's a finer texture to get down in between the roots. And we don't want to push too much because we don't want to break those fragile roots as we're pushing that soil down on top of them. So you want to make sure to create kind of a well around the tree so that it creates a reservoir for that water to percolate down over those roots. And then of course, to help preserve that moisture in the soil, we're going to add some mulch around that new tree. course, we always want to make sure that we label any new plant that we put in here. You can see we've got quite a tree ring around this established, and we're going to put more mulch in here. But if you're putting this out in your lawn, you want to make sure that you have a significant tree ring to protect it from a weed eater or any lawnmower or anything like that. Now the last thing that we're going to do, and you want to make sure to read your care instructions that come along with your tree, because there might be some pruning that you need to do. In our particular situation here, this tree has not been topped or anything, and so we do need to prune it. Now, I know this looks drastic, but we actually are going to want to cut this back to about 18 to 24 inches. And that's because as a fruit tree, you want that branch scaffolding to be much lower. It'll make maintenance and harvesting of your fruit much easier later on as those branches continue to grow. Otherwise, they might be up a little bit too high out of your reach. So here, we're going to measure about 18 inches, which is just right about here. So we are going to actually cut off all of this. We're going to find a bud, and there's a bud right there. So we're going to cut right above that bud. So now I know we've just taken off half of this tree and you feel like you've paid for half of this, but this is really the best situation for this tree, and it's important. Some trees will already come with their top cut, so it might be shipped to you like this. And what's going to happen is all of these small buds are going to push out and come out this spring, and so you'll have your branching starting at this height here. This will make for a great tree as it continues to grow. We will check back on it as we prune it even more, because it tends to need a series of pruning each year. While it might look drastic, this is tough love on a fruit tree, and I promise it'll make for a great orchard in years to come.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.